Hello again, and welcome to Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Shults. It's that time of year again. Time to check out the ghost tours that are so popular in the fall. Join me for a quick trip to Alton, Illinois, as we go Lights Out. One of the tour guides for the Haunted Alton tours is Luke Naliborski. Luke's a friend of mine. He's been on Lights Out before, and when I heard that he had a new book out, I knew I had to get him on again to talk about it. Hey, Luke, welcome back to Lights Out.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Very cool. So, last time we talked, I did my thing where I ask you what the experience that you had that turned you into a paranormal investigator, and you told me a story the last time you were on, but I understand you have another childhood experience that kind of informed your role as a future ghost hunter. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, obviously, I grew up in 77, so I grew up in the 80s, and I was, totally into hair metal, Motley Crue, Kiss, Poison, all those guys, and, there was a craze for a while about playing records backwards, and you'd get these messages and stuff would come through, and I remember there was even a movie called Trick or Treat that was kind of about that. It had Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne in it. That came out in the 80s. I don't know if you remember that or not, but
I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, I know there's a newer Trick or Treat, but this one is Trick or Treat, not Trick or Treat.
Okay.
Yeah, you should definitely look it up.
Yeah.
But what we did was my brothers and my older brother and then myself and then I think my older brother's friend, we were all down in one of the basement bedrooms. And my other brother was in his room. He was fixing a model car or something. That's what he did. And so we were back in the one room and we're listening to Motley Crue Shout at the Devil. And we kept playing the song, I think it's called In the Beginning, which is like the opening part of the album. And we're playing that backwards, and we're trying to hear all these messages and stuff. And probably, a lot like some of the EVPs, we hear what we want to hear kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so... Anyway, so we're listening to it for a little bit, and then we decide, well, let's listen to it play forward. So we're listening to it, the way it was intended, and it got almost to the end of that track, and then all of a sudden it just stopped and started going backwards itself.
Oh, geez.
So, obviously the record players aren't supposed to do that. So I remember my older brother and his friend, we were running up the stairs as fast as we could, and we're like tackling each other trying to get ahead of the other person just so we didn't have to be the last one out of the basement. But obviously the last one was going to be my other brother, who peeked out his door thinking, what in the world's going on? And then when he saw us running, he figured that would be the best thing for him to do is run too, and then he could figure out what happened later. So that was just one of the stories in this house that it was whether or not it was anything ghost related or not, I think it was kind of one of those little stories that kind of got me into the direction that I was heading.
Well, yeah, I can see how. So the direction you are now is, part of it is writing books of true ghost stories, and part of it is being a tour guide for haunted places. Tell us about that.
I've been a tour guide here for Alton Hauntings, which is a Troy Taylor tour that he started up in Alton back in the late 1990s. I think I've been doing the tours for him since about 2006, so this is my 11th year.
Oh, wow.
And and it's, I do the walking tour. We also have bus tours, and bus tours are nice because they can go a little further than what we can walk to, but I enjoy the walking part, especially in the fall. Get the crunching leaves under your feet and stuff, which, the way this year's been with weather, we really don't have as much of the crunching leaves yet, but hopefully, we still got a few weeks left of tours, so maybe we'll have that.
Cool.
But it's a history and hauntings tour, and we take you to all these different locations, and, most of the ones we take you to, we can tell you historically with fact why it's haunted.
That's what I like.
And I feel that, you can't have a ghost unless you have history. And there's something that put them there. Yeah, something put them there, and we want to make sure that whenever we tell you the stories that you're getting the reason why they're there. Yeah. And, in some cases there's locations that we go to where, maybe we can't find anything historically why it's haunted, and then we tell you that up front, and we just say, well, but here's the stories, here's what people are experiencing, and we try to put that up front just so people, we're not trying to spread anything in town. Everything we want to tell everybody is fact-based.
Yeah, and I do remember you saying to somebody else, that I was listening in on a conversation you were having, that when you go on these tours, you encourage people to have their own experiences. And
Yeah.
you don't try to fake anything. Every experience that you have on these tours is going to be real.
Yeah, if something happens on our tour, we don't ever want to question or have the people on the tour question whether or not what they experienced was legit. And I mean, obviously, we want to try to debunk everything, as it's happening if we can. And there's been a lot of tours where, we've seen shadows or something, and then, you try to look and you realize, oh, yeah, well, it was created because a car drove by. And, and we're trying to debunk things first, but there's been so many times where you just can't. I mean, you can't debunk it no matter how hard you try. And those experiences, when they happen, I mean, they're usually pretty special. And sometimes it might only be one or two people that experience it. And I've had times where the entire tour experiences it. So you just never really know. But we don't want to sit there and lead people to experience things just because we got you scared and, your mind's playing tricks on you. We want it all to be legit. And I always tell people on a tour, I said, don't try so hard to experience something because you might be let down and then you're not going to enjoy yourself. You're not going to enjoy the stories. Just come on a tour, you listen to the stories, and you never know.
That's wise advice. I like that.
Yep.
So one of the scariest places, I know I've never been able to go on an Alton tour. I haven't gotten down there yet, but I understand. I've heard a lot of stories about the Unitarian Church. Unitarian Church.
Yeah, that place, it's very active. It's our last stop of the night, and we have to walk up a very nasty hill just to get to it, but it's worth it. That place, we do go inside 3 locations on our tour, which is actually quite special because I've been on tours all over the country that you don't go inside anywhere. So we're very fortunate to have 3 locations that we do go inside.
Excellent.
And the church is one of those locations. And, I'm not going to say something happens all the time, but that church,
the high probability of it?
Yeah, the numbers are up. The odds are in your favor that somebody might experience something. And, one of the tours that we did, my buddy Len Adams, he used to be one of the tour guides in Alton. And then, it got a little tough on him with the hills and everything. So he retired from the Alton tours. But he was doing a tour, and I was just helping out that night, just came on it for fun. And when we got to the Unitarian Church, he was... he had to use the restroom. And so he told me, go ahead and entertain the crowd. So a lot of times when we go to church, my way of entertaining is playing the piano.
Nice.
And there was one point where I just sat down and started playing some, scary theme songs like the Halloween theme and The Exorcist and stuff like that. And when I finished, I pushed the bench into the piano. I pulled the lid closed. I pulled the cover back over it. It was a baby grand piano they had then. And then I sat down on the altar. And a few minutes later, all of a sudden you hear several notes getting hit on the piano. And everybody in the sanctuary, about 40, 45 people, they all turned their heads and looked at the piano, realizing that, wait a minute, there's nobody there.
Oh, and it was covered.
But they all heard it. Yeah, it's covered. The lid's closed. There's a big cover over the top of it. I mean, there's no way that somebody could have been playing it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
and
so
to
that
have
was a cool
everyone
experience.
react.
Yeah, and then recently, I was actually hosting an overnight there, and there was a paranormal team called the Paranormal Free Agents out of Missouri that were there. And we were doing an overnight investigation, and several things were happening that night for us. A lot of people were hearing voices or getting touched or seeing things. And at one point, there were 3 of us down in the basement, and we were in the old part of the basement, which dates back to the 1830s. Everybody else was in the newer part of the basement in all these little classrooms doing an investigation. And so we're standing up basically underneath the sanctuary floor is where we were.
Okay.
And we do feel that there might be some children's spirits down in the basement. And this team did have a sensitive on the team who was picking up on this as well, without any knowledge that, that was something that we knew or felt at least. And, well, she was saying that there were little kids down there at the time that 3 of us were in there. And at one point, one of the leaders of this paranormal team, he had put his hand out, just saying that, welcoming the child to hold his hand if he wanted. He was saying, the child was holding his hand. And I've never actually experienced something like that. So I'd asked him, I said, well, what does it feel like when they're holding your hand? I mean, does it feel like an actual hand or does it feel like something else? And he said it feels like, sometimes they'll feel warmer or sometimes they'll feel like the tingles kind of feeling. So, we had all the lights off down there. It's very dark. And I put my hand in the area where he had his hand, and I'm stretching it out as my right hand. And it's actually up on a a dirt wall that's like into the crawl space that goes under the floor is where our hands were.
Oh.
So I'm waiting and waiting and not really feeling anything. Well, then all of a sudden my left hand, which was down at my side, it started feeling like it was really dirty.
Oh.
And like I could rub my fingers together and it just felt like my hand was filthy. But then my hand that was actually sitting in the dirt, I'm rubbing those fingers together. I'm like, why does that hand not feel dirty? That's actually in the dirt, but my other hand does feel dirty. And I kind of made reference to it, and we kind of thought about it, like, well, if these kids are hiding up in this crawl space, I mean, maybe they're going to be dirty, and that's why my hand's feeling that way, because they are holding my hand.
Yeah.
Well, then shortly after that, my left hand started getting those little pinpricks. It felt like my hand was going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You get all those tingles, but my arm was just aiming down at my side. It wasn't like my arm was in some kind of strange angle that I was cutting off circulation to where that was why I was getting that feeling.
Sure, okay.
So we had that happen, and then a little bit, I think it was maybe before that or after that, I can't remember, but they had mentioned, if there's anybody down here, can you make a noise? And within a minute, you hear these tiny footsteps running directly above us from one end of the sanctuary all the way to the other. And everybody was downstairs. So we hear that, and I mean, it's literally, the sound is really loud above us, and you hear it getting quieter and quieter as the footsteps are getting away. And that happened 2 more times that night.
Wow.
So Ron, who's the leader of that group, he had made a mention of wanting to provide a toy ball for these little children down there. So I had actually met up with him the following week, and he gave me a toy ball, and then that night when I did a tour, I put the ball down in the basement for the children. Mm-hmm. And now every tour I go, I always go down and check and see if the ball's still there. But one time I went down there during this season we're in right now, and I took a friend of mine that was with me that always helps me on the tours, and his wife. Mm-hmm. And whenever we went down there, we were just looking to see if the ball was still there, and it was in the same spot we left it. But I'm just kind of pointing some stuff out with the flashlight, and then all of a sudden we hear those footsteps again directly above us. So yeah, and Mark and Michelle, that was the couple that were down there with me. You could tell Michelle was very scared because we had a little flashlight on, and you'd see her eyes get huge, and she immediately grabs a hold of Mark and buries her face in his chest, and she was ready to go. So
oh no.
Yeah, so normally something like that would happen if it was just me. I would have pursued, or at least stayed down there. But at this point, I knew, well, I guess we better get going. So yeah, so we left. But yeah, that was just this year that we had that happen, and that place is very active. So it's one of those buildings that doesn't let us down very often.
Oh, fantastic.
Yep.
That's brilliant. So now you have just come out in August with a new book called Creepy with a Chance of Ghosts. And I am happy to tell my listeners that it is vintage Luke Naliborski. It's got humor in it and just stories that are told just like they're happening, which is wonderful. I was wondering if you could maybe share with us just what's your favorite story from Creepy with a Chance of Ghosts?
The one that I think I like the most, and the book is a mixture of investigations that I've done as well as stories that have been told me by people who lived on it. Unfortunately, with doing investigations and doing interviews, a lot of times these people that have these great stories, they don't live in a house anymore. Maybe the house has been torn down or something, so we can't go and investigate it. Or maybe if people do live there, they're not going to welcome us, in with open arms.
Yeah.
It's a thing where, I like hearing these stories of these houses that people have never heard from before. A lot of these businesses and these landmarks and places that, everybody always talks about and they write about them all the time. And they're great stories, but I like doing the ones of like the common people that don't get their story out there. And so the book has a lot of that, but I think my favorite story is actually the one about the Carlinville Courthouse. And because that was a story where I actually went there and was able to do an investigation. I think the history of the building is incredible. It's a beautiful building, and I really enjoyed that. And Kaylin, who's a big part of our group, she was involved in it, and Len Adams, and the three of us actually went there way before everybody else got there for the investigation. So we got to kind of poke around a little bit on our own. Mm-hmm. And I was getting a lot of interaction, and whether it was sounds or even things coming through some of the devices like the digital recorders or the ghost radio or things like that, and it just seemed like there were so many different ways that the spirits there were able to communicate with us that I thought it was great. And I know a lot of other people there that came for the investigation that night, they had experiences as well.
Oh, wonderful.
And so I mean it was just an active place, and I really enjoyed it. But Another story I enjoyed was the one about the little girl that looked through the stairway spindles on the staircase, and I enjoyed that story too, and that was kind of a creepy place. So there's just a variety of stories in there, and we hit some bigger buildings, some little houses, and it's fun.
Oh, that sounds like a wonderful variety, like you said.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
great. So the book is Creepy with a Chance of Ghosts, and Luke, tell us where we can get it. There are a couple places, including a place where you can get it signed.
Yeah. If you want to get it signed, you can get them direct from me. And if you actually look up my name on Facebook, you'll find a group page, and you can just contact me through that. Or I actually have my own vintage toy store now, and you can look me up through that. My toy store is called I Had That. So if you go on Facebook, you look up I Had That Toy, you'll find my store. You can reach out to me that way. But I can ship the books for you, whatever you need me to do. You can also order them through Amazon, and the new one should be available on Kindle soon. My first 3 books, Lighter Side of Darkness, Lights Out, and Ghosts Never Say Boo, those are all available on Kindle already. But the new one will be shortly. It actually just came out in August, so we're a little bit behind schedule to get it on Kindle.
Okay, fantastic. So Christmas is on its way, guys. Pick this up. Get Luke to sign it for you.
Yeah, they make great stocking stuffers, or give them to people you hate even. So
right, yeah. If somebody's expecting coal in their stocking, give them a copy of Creepy with a Chance of Ghosts instead.
Yep, exactly.
Yes. So pick up a copy of this, read for yourself about the Carlinville Courthouse, and enjoy Luke's marvelous storytelling. I know I do. I'm going to have to get you to sign my copy of it sometime.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll see each other. We'll see each other in June, right?
Yeah, we should. Yep. Absolutely.
If not sooner.
You know it. Well, Luke, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on again. Mm-hmm. It's always a blast to hang out with Luke and to hear about not only his ghost stories, but his toy store, too. Find Luke online at heyihadthat.net and at ghostsneversayboo.com. On the next episode of Lights Out, we're going to revisit the owners of the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult. Greg and Dana have even more stories of haunted objects to share with us the next time we go Lights Out.